You're listening to The Pump Fake.
And welcome into the latest edition of the Pump Fake, everybody. Jarrett Bailey here with you as always. Thank you so much for making the show part of your day. If you're listening as a podcast, please be sure to leave a review and comment. If you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment on YouTube as well. Lots to get into today. Matthew Stafford's injury doesn't look like it's getting any better. We'll talk about the preseason week one as well. I'll give you my thoughts, at least one thought from every game. But we'll start with Matthew Stafford and that injury that continues to nag him. And every day that goes by with this injury, I get less and less confident when it comes to the Los Angeles Rams. Stafford's going into year 18 as an NFL quarterback. And at first, the injury's all right, yeah, he's a veteran guy. If he has any sort of ailment, they're not going to rush him back or anything like that. But then as Sean McVay continues to be asked about this, it continues to get a little bit more nerve-wracking. And if I'm a Rams fan, I'm biting my nails right now. All right, what the hell's going on? And what was it last week? They asked Sean McVay, hey, how's Matthew doing? And he's like, well, he's walking. And it's oh my God, if that's the bar, that's not great. And then today, as Adam Grossbard of the LA Daily News reported, today Matthew Stafford was in street clothes, and the expectation was that he would return to practice on Monday. So as these things keep happening and as his return to the practice field continues to get delayed, these questions are going to keep coming up all right, how serious is this thing? And is he going to be ready for week one? And even if he feels good enough to play physically week one, is he going to be able to be there mentally in terms of, all right, he hasn't had any sort of practice reps. He's going to be clunky. He's going to be rusty. That's not going to put the Rams potentially in the best situation. So even if he is ready physically for week one, if he doesn't see enough practice reps before then, are you going to throw him out there against a really good pass rush that features Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter? Those are real questions that you gotta have answers for sooner rather than later. The season's less than a month away. And that things aren't great. And I believe it was Justin Graver of the Heed the Call podcast in front of this show and this channel. We love gravy here. But he made the good point on Heed the Call, saying it's never a good sign when a head coach and a franchise is gassing up their backup quarterback, which the Rams have been doing a little bit with Jimmy Garoppolo. And in terms of backup quarterbacks, you can certainly do a lot worse than Jimmy Garoppolo. I know that when he was in San Francisco and his brief time in Las Vegas, everybody, clowned him and whatnot. It was all right, he was a product of Shanahan, and then he goes to Las Vegas and immediately doesn't have any sort of success under Josh McDaniels. He's, a handsome backup. But in terms of backup, you can do a lot worse than Jimmy Garoppolo. Even so, when you have a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, there should be no conversation about the backup. Absolutely none. How many Aaron Rodgers backups can you name? How many, and people in Green Bay might be able to do it, but if you're not a fan of the Steelers, how many Ben Roethlisberger backups can you name when he was there? How many Peyton Manning backups are getting a lot of attention? We shouldn't be talking about backup quarterbacks if you're confident with where you are with your starter. And so that's the thing that worries me, is that anytime a backup quarterback starts to get a little bit gassed up, that tells you, okay, the franchise might be a little bit concerned about the status of their starter. And, I picked the Rams to come out of the NFC and represent the NFC in the Super Bowl this year. I might have to recant that statement. and recant that prediction, because if Stafford still isn't practicing with a back injury nonetheless. Oh, by the way, Adam Grossbart also posted Matthew Stafford walked into this immortal chamber. Immortal advertises itself as a wellness device that aims to optimize human performance and promote holistic health through a combination of non-invasive technologies. And if you're watching on YouTube, here's what it looks like. That doesn't give me a lot of confidence that we're putting him into something that looks like it came out of an Avengers movie to make sure that his back's okay. So I'm very hesitant when it comes to the Matthew Stafford injury. And I hope he's okay. I hope, we can look at this, by like week 6 and say, hey, remember when everybody was worried about the Matthew Stafford thing and it turned out to not be all that important? I hope that's what we're saying. Because, A, Matthew Stafford rules, and I hope he has a couple more years left in where he plays well. In my mind, when he's completely healthy, he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. Obviously you have the top 4 of Mahomes, Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. Those are, kind of the consensus top 4. But when you start the other quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford's at the top of the list for me. I hope he's okay. I hope he's on the field week 1 and 100% and looks like his potential future Hall of Fame self. And once we get to October, we're talking about this and laughing about it rather than continuing to worry about the back injury. But if it does continue to linger, other questions will arise. And one of those questions that's already begun is, will the Los Angeles Rams be the team that ends up trading for Kirk Cousins? And, I know I just pointed out, like, the Rams continue to gas up Jimmy Garoppolo. But I think we all know, if you could choose right now, would you rather have Kirk Cousins or Jimmy Garoppolo? Most to everybody would say, yeah, give me Kirk Cousins. And even coming off a down year for Kirk, there were times last year, especially week 2 against Philadelphia, where he leads a comeback on Monday Night Football. Like there were times last year where Kirk still looked like good Kirk. And I think another year removed from the Achilles injury will do him a lot of good. And usually with these things, like, it does end up being a team like completely out of left field that makes these moves. And maybe the Rams end up being that team. What they would give up for him, I don't know. And it would all depend on how long this Matthew Stafford thing drags out. If it's only for a couple weeks, they'll roll with Jimmy Garoppolo and that'll be that. But if this ends up being something like serious, and of course, knock on wood, nobody wants that. But if it does end up being something serious, they become a team that instantly goes on Kirk watch. Let's say Matthew Stafford has to miss, 3 months. He's gone till, close to Thanksgiving. That's a problem. You're going to roll with Jimmy Garoppolo for 11 weeks? Probably not. Now, whatever happens when Stafford gets healthy, that's a future Rams problem. But they instantly become a team that you circle and say, I wonder if they would do it. And Kirk has a long history with Kyle Shanahan. Sean McVay was on Washington's staff when Kirk was there. So there's an existing relationship between Sean McVay and Kirk Cousins. It makes a lot of sense from the perspective of it's an upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo. There's a pre-existing relationship with Sean McVay. And it would make a lot of sense for Kirk going to a place to run an offense that he knows how to run. And if you're the Rams, you would certainly take Kirk Cousins over Jimmy Garoppolo if Matthew Stafford were to have to miss an extended period of time. So while everybody's kind of pointed to teams like Cleveland or Indianapolis, and, Indianapolis especially is a team that you could probably still circle, watch out for the Rams if Stafford's injury continues to drag on and ends up being much more serious than any of us originally thought, because it certainly feels like a possibility. And of course, we don't want that. But if this thing continues to drag, then they're in a position where, hey, desperate times call for desperate measures. So let's talk about the preseason, though. Week 1 officially done. And if you haven't seen yet, I do have a Substack now. It's called The Snap, and you can go ahead and subscribe. You can either subscribe for free. There is a paid tier as well. If you want to give me $5 a month for a little bit of extra content, $45 for the whole year. So go over to jbailey.nfl.substack.com and subscribe to The Snap, where you can read both versions of the Sicko's Guide to the NFL preseason. What it is, and those who have followed me for a long amount of time, I've written for anywhere that can be written about football. I've written there, and I'm still doing stuff with Sporting News. I'm still the managing editor for Behind the Steel Curtain over at SB Nation. Still doing all that stuff, but this is a little bit of an avenue for me to be a little bit more creative, a little bit more open with what I say. I can be, I can be a little bit more vulgar. I can swear a little bit and make it more fun, funny, and just let my personality shine a little bit more. So if you want to read the entire versions of the Sicko's Guide to the Preseason, please go subscribe to The Snap at jbailey.nfl.substack.com. So let's start with this. The Colts and the Ravens. Everybody was looking forward to the absolute dumpster fire that is Anthony Richardson versus Daniel Jones. And yet somehow the worst quarterback to take the field that night was Cooper Rush, who is the honkiest honky to ever honky. He threw an interception on, I want to say it was his first pass of the game. And then the quarterback battle between Jones and Richardson was kind of cut short because Anthony Richardson got a case of Brian Baldinger finger, where he took a sack from David Ajabo, and then in certain camera angles, like if you pause it, you could see his finger was in the shape of a right angle. So dislocated finger. He's back at practice, though. Wasn't anything serious. Daniel Jones made one throw to Ashton Doolin where everybody was like, oh, look, Daniel Jones made a throw. I'm looking forward to everybody being stupid about Daniel Jones. So that was my biggest takeaway here. The Ravens had a couple big special teams plays. LaJohntay Weister returned a punt for a touchdown, and Rasheen Ali had a long kick return. But yeah, the big thing was the quarterback battle between Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson still kind of being up in the air. I would still expect Anthony Richardson to start. The Bengals and the Eagles. Tanner McKee, 20 of 25. Good Lord. It's pretty impressive that in a game where Joe Burrow actually played in the preseason, threw 2 touchdown passes, he was the second most discussed quarterback. Tanner McKee going scorched earth and just raising hell with the wrath of 1,000 gods. So good for Tanner McKee, a guy who you might be on trade watch now. If the Eagles can snap, a day 3 pick for him, maybe they do it. They still have Dorian Thompson-Robinson on the roster who they acquired from Cleveland. So, but then Dorian Thompson-Robinson entered the game, and I contemplated lighting myself on fire because I can't be bothered to watch Dorian Thompson-Robinson play football. So that's where we'll leave that one. The Raiders and the Seahawks. Yeah, some guy named Robbie Oots, who's a fullback for the Seahawks, had a catch. And then a few plays later on the Raiders opening, or the Seahawks opening drive, Troy Polamalu's nephew had an interception. So that's fun. Aiden O'Connell threw 2 interceptions, and I can't be bothered to watch him play football either. So this was one of the games that I couldn't care less about. I went to bed at halftime. I wasn't staying up to 1 a.m. to watch Jalen Milroe and Aiden O'Connell, or whoever the hell the Raiders' 3rd string quarterback is. So that was that. Let's go to Cleveland and Carolina. Shedeur Sanders threw 2 touchdown passes. Good for him. Did we really need a Nike ad about it? Probably not. But good for Shedeur Sanders. He's probably like the best quarterback on that roster. I still think Flacco will start week 1. But Dylan Gabriel has had like a bad camp, especially like over the last week. It was reported that he went 3 of 14 in team drills. You know how hard it is to go 3 of 14 in a training camp practice? And I think it was Daryl Reuter on the Browns beat who said that Dylan Gabriel's incapable of playing quarterback at the NFL level. That's not great. Kenny Pickett's the other quarterback that's actually in contention. They also signed Snoop Huntley. I don't think he's going to be in contention to start. This feels like a two-horse race between Flacco and Sanders at this point. I think it'll still be Flacco. Shedeur will get snaps at some point, though. Tet McMillan had a 20-yard catch. Bryce Young just kind of threw it in a bucket, 20 yards downfield. Good for him. I do think that tandem will have a nice little year this year, so we'll see what that looks like. Washington and New England. Some guy named Lan Larison scored for the Patriots. That's where we are in the preseason, when a guy who sounds like a random generated name in year 23 of a Madden 12 franchise scores a touchdown. That's when you know it's peak August football. Travion Henderson returned the opening kick for a touchdown, though. Hell yeah, Travion Henderson rules. And Efton Chisholm caught a touchdown. A lot of buzz around him. Wide receiver, undrafted. Patriots camp. Apparently he's had a really good offseason. Probably going to make the 53-man roster. So the next great white Patriot, which I know out of context sounds very January 6th-y. So my apologies for that. Sam Hartman went 9 of 19, so he is as bad at football as he is hot. Sorry for Sam Hartman. Lions, Falcons. Morris Norris obviously had the injury. Hope he's doing well. I believe I saw multiple Lions and Norris himself, posted that he's doing okay, which is great news. Scary injury. They suspended the game as they should have. But glad to hear that he is doing okay and has, movement in all of his extremities and everything like that. So scary injury. Glad anything horrific was avoided. Giants and Bills. Jackson Dart threw a touchdown pass to Lil Jordan Humphrey. Cool. On that play, though, if you go back and watch it, Damar Hamlin not in position and he's just jogging. Not a good look for Damar Hamlin. So that was kind of the story of that game. Was Jackson Dart looked pretty good. The Bills defense looked in postseason forms. They allowed Russell Wilson to put together a 12-play drive on the opening drive of the game. So hopefully that gets fixed. And apparently if you put on a Bills uniform, you are just going to allow first down conversions on 3rd and long. So hopefully they get all of that fixed up before week 1. Regardless, like the Bills are going to be in the playoffs. They are playing for, all right, we got to beat Baltimore again. We got to beat Kansas City to get to the Super Bowl. Their season boils down to 3 games. As long as Josh Allen stays healthy, the Bills are going to be minimum in the divisional round. They're playing to get to January. Houston at Minnesota. I got to tell you, man, enough of putting local radio guys on the national broadcast. Like, obviously, for the Vikings local TV station, Paul Allen's going to do the play-by-play. He's their radio guy. But for the NFL Network broadcast of it, you can't send 2 of your guys to Minnesota to do your broadcasts. Instead, I got to hear Paul Allen do sound effects for 3 hours. I'm perfectly okay never hearing Paul Allen's voice again. That was torture. Ambry Thomas had an interception in this game, which is a blast from the 2021 Senior Bowl. So good for Ambry Thomas. Didn't know he was still in the league. Cowboys, Rams. Joe Milton throws like Mariano Rivera in the bottom of the 9th on every pass. It doesn't matter if you're 90 yards downfield or 3 feet away. He's throwing that as hard as he possibly can, which is, I kind of scratch my head that I ever wanted the Steelers to trade for him after watching that game, because the accuracy is a real issue. So Joe Milton, like, very physically talented, but there's a lot that needs honed in there. Sean McVay turning every August into the Stetson Bennett Invitational, kind of funny. Steelers, Jaguars. Mason Rudolph threw a touchdown pass to Darnell Washington. Had a really good drive. Skylar Thompson threw 3 touchdowns. I can't tell you the last time the Steelers had 4 touchdown passes in a game. If I had to guess, Ben Roethlisberger was the guy who did it. Cam Little, a 70-yard field goal. To hell with, it was a preseason, so it's not the NFL record. Field goals don't get easier because it's the preseason. The greatest kick in NFL history by Cam Little. That was awesome. And the Steelers won. So that was the most entertaining game of the weekend, in my opinion. Back and forth, both teams scoring, 4 touchdown passes for the Steelers and a 70-yard field goal. What more could you want from a preseason game? I would say it's in contention for the greatest preseason game ever. Jets, Packers. The Packers receivers couldn't catch crabs from a $10 hooker. 3 of you will get that grumpy old men reference and will laugh your asses off. Others will get mad that I said hooker. I'm sorry. So poor Jordan Love. Matthew Golden's good. Put every other receiver that you have and a cannon and fire them into the sun. That was a brutal display. Justin Fields ran for a touchdown. We know he can do that. Can he get better at reading defenses and be a little bit more assertive when it comes to just ripping balls into windows and seeing if he can do it? That's what I want to see from Justin Fields. Titans at Buccaneers. Cam Ward looked comfortable. Led a touchdown drive. That's pretty good. Emeka Egbuka made a nice catch. Overall, I mean, it was a preseason game. Wanted to see what Cam Ward looked like. He looked fine. Chiefs at Cardinals. Kyler Murray threw a really good throw on the run to Jaden Hicks. The only problem is that Jaden Hicks plays for the Chiefs. He threw it directly to him. Also found out that Gardner Minshew, on top of him being the backup, the Chiefs also employ Bailey Zappi, who threw 2 interceptions. So that there you go for the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes went 1 for 1 with 1 yard and a touchdown and then got the hell out of there. Broncos 49ers. Jarrett Stidham was the best quarterback on the field for either team. Great names do great things. And the Broncos defense had 3 interceptions. That defense would probably be pretty good. And if I'm not mistaken, oh, no, sorry, there's 2 more. What was it? Dolphins Bears. The Dolphins are going to be a dreadful football team. Short yardage is a mess. Last week during dual practice with the Bears, they were fighting. They've been fighting one another. Like, that is a bad vibes football team. And then Saints, Chargers, I fell asleep. Tyler Shuck threw a pick 6. There's your season in a nutshell for the Saints. Trey Lance ran around a lot. That's about it. And that's week 1 of the preseason. In my words. And again, please do subscribe to the Substack. jbailleynfl.substack.com to subscribe to the Snap. There's a free tier as well as a tier that you can pay for if you want a little bit extra content from me, if you want to just give me a little bit of support and like me that much. Either way, I appreciate you for reading. But that'll do it for this episode of the Pump Fake as we get into approaching week 2 of the preseason, getting ever so closer to the regular season being back. And we'll be back with multiple shows per week right here, wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe. Leave a comment. If you are listening as a podcast, leave a review, leave a comment. Appreciate everybody so much for tuning in and making the show part of your day. We will talk to you later on in the week. It's the Pump Fake.